Most men don't lose a woman because they are cruel, careless, or disloyal. They lose her because they unknowingly begin to act from fear. When a woman starts pulling away, the cause is usually not a single mistake, but a slow accumulation of behaviors that quietly drain attraction. This video exists to interrupt that pattern before it becomes permanent. The goal is not to blame, but to make men aware of how easily they sabotage their own chances without realizing it. If this message resonates, support the channel by liking the video and subscribing so this perspective can reach more men who need it. At the beginning, things usually feel effortless. You are relaxed, grounded, playful, and emotionally free. You speak naturally, joke without filtering yourself, express opinions without anxiety, and move through interactions without fear of losing her. This version of you is not trying to win her approval. He is simply being himself. That is the version she is responding to. But once emotional attachment forms, many men begin to shift. Their voice softens unnaturally. Their opinions become cautious. Their humor disappears. They start monitoring every word, afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of upsetting her, afraid of losing what they've just gained. This is where attraction quietly starts to fade. Not because you care, but because you stop being authentic. Instead of expressing who you are, you begin adjusting yourself to keep her comfortable. You mistake self-erasure for love from her perspective. Something feels off. She senses that the man she was drawn to is slowly disappearing, replaced by someone who is reactive, restrained, and uncertain. She feels like she is dating a shadow rather than a grounded man with substance. Women are not attracted to men who mold themselves to be accepted. They are attracted to men who are stable in who they are and invite others into that world. When you change yourself to keep her, you communicate that your identity is negotiable and your confidence is fragile. Ironically, this is not what keeps her close. It is often what makes her leave. The more you abandon yourself, the less there is for her to connect with. And this is only the first mistake, because once a man starts seeking safety by changing himself, it rarely stops there. It usually evolves into something even more destructive, something that feels loving on the surface but quietly repels attraction at its core. In the next part, we'll talk about how praise, when driven by fear, becomes a hidden form of begging. After a man starts reshaping himself to avoid losing her, the next trap often appears disguised as affection. Compliments increase, messages become sweeter, longer, and more frequent. On the surface, it looks like love. In reality, it is often fear wearing a romantic mask. Genuine appreciation is attractive because it flows naturally. But when praise becomes constant and excessive, it stops being a gift and starts becoming a request. There's a clear energetic difference between telling a woman she looks beautiful because you genuinely feel it, and repeating affirmations to secure her presence. When every morning starts with exaggerated praise, when every silence is filled with reassurance, when phrases like, "I can't live without you," or "You're my whole world" appear too early and too often, the message underneath is not desire, it is dependency. Women sense this immediately, even if they can't explain it logically. The tone shifts from confidence to persuasion. When compliments are used as a strategy, a woman begins to feel that your emotional balance depends on her reaction. She feels the pressure of being responsible for your self-worth. Instead of feeling chosen, she feels needed. And neediness does not create desire. It creates discomfort. Attraction thrives when a man wants a woman but does not require her approval to feel whole. The moment your words are driven by anxiety rather than presence, the dynamic subtly flips. From her perspective, excessive validation signals that you may not have many options, or worse, that you do not believe you deserve affection unless you constantly reinforce your value through praise. This quietly erodes respect. She may still enjoy the attention at first, but over time, something inside her pulls back. She stops leaning in emotionally. She responds slower. She shares less. She rarely explains why, because most women don't consciously analyze attraction. They just feel it fading. Men often misinterpret this withdrawal and respond by increasing the very behavior causing the problem. More compliments, more reassurance, more emotional intensity. This creates a loop where the man chases closeness while the woman seeks space. Eventually, she doesn't argue or confront, she simply becomes distant, distracted, or unavailable. Desire cannot be negotiated. The moment praise turns into a tool to hold someone in place. Attraction begins to dissolve. And this pattern doesn't stop with words alone. It usually expands into something even more visible. Something men believe is impressive, but women experience as emotionally exhausting. In the next part, we'll explore why trying to impress her often pushes her further away instead of drawing her closer. Once a man starts seeking approval through words, he often escalates his efforts through actions. This is where the urge to impress takes over. He talks more about his achievements, highlights his financial stability, exaggerates his ambition, or carefully curates his appearance and lifestyle to signal value. On paper, these seem like logical moves, but attraction does not respond to performance. It responds to emotional presence. Women are rarely drawn to men who feel like they are on stage. When a man is constantly showcasing, explaining, or proving himself, it creates distance rather than intimacy. The energy behind the behavior matters more than the behavior itself. Trying too hard communicates insecurity. Even when the achievements are real, instead of feeling grounded, the interaction starts to feel tense, as if something is being sold. Real attraction is built in moments of calm connection. A man who is emotionally steady, comfortable in silence, and fully present creates a sense of safety that no display of success can replace. He listens without rushing to impress. He responds rather than performs. He allows conversations to breathe instead of filling every gap with evidence of worth. This kind of presence signals inner stability, and inner stability is deeply attractive. When a man is focused on impressing, he is focused outward. His attention is on how he is being perceived rather than what is actually happening between them. Women feel this disconnect. Instead of feeling seen, they feel observed. Instead of feeling met, they feel evaluated. This is why many women say they feel chemistry with a man who does very little, but lose interest in someone who does everything right. The paradox is that the more you try to manufacture attraction, the less authentic it becomes. Chemistry cannot be forced. It emerges when two people are relaxed enough to be real. Performance creates pressure. Presence creates polarity. One pushes her away. The other invites her closer. Men who understand this don't rush to impress. They don't flood interactions with proof of value. They allow attraction to grow naturally through shared moments, emotional steadiness, and quiet confidence. And because they are not trying to win. They often do. But when a man fails to create connection and instead leans into performance, the emotional consequences deepen. The next mistake goes beyond impressing and enters a far more dangerous territory, where a woman becomes the emotional center of a man's life. In the next part, we'll break down how emotional dependency silently destroys attraction from the inside out. Emotional dependency begins quietly and often feels like love to the man experiencing it. A woman slowly becomes his source of motivation, confidence, happiness, and emotional stability. Her messages regulate his mood. Her attention determines his self-worth. When she is present, he feels alive. When she pulls back, anxiety takes over. This is not devotion. It is emotional collapse disguised as attachment. You can see it in the behavior. He texts constantly, not to share, but to soothe himself. He needs reassurance. A delayed reply creates panic. A short message triggers overthinking. His emotional state becomes reactive and unstable, swinging based on her availability. From the outside, this looks like intensity. From her perspective, it feels overwhelming. Women are not attracted to men they have to emotionally parent. They want a partner, not a dependent. They want to admire a man's strength, not manage his anxiety. When a man's emotional center lives inside a woman, she feels the weight of responsibility instead of desire. Attraction requires polarity. Dependency collapses it. At a deeper level, emotional reliance signals that a man cannot stand firmly on his own. If his confidence, peace, and identity vanish without her validation, she does not feel safe leaning into him. Safety is not about control or dominance. It is about emotional stability. A man who can regulate himself creates space for desire to exist. A man who unravels creates pressure. This is why many women slowly detach rather than confront. They sense that pulling away will cause emotional chaos, so they distance themselves quietly, hoping the intensity fades when it doesn't. Attraction shuts down entirely. The man often feels blindsided, unaware that his emotional overinvestment was the very thing pushing her away. Strength in a relationship does not come from needing someone. It comes from choosing them while remaining whole. When a man can stand independently, he invites a woman into his life rather than asking her to hold it together for him. But emotional dependency rarely exists alone. It often pairs with another subtle mistake that destroys respect even faster. When a man loses his emotional center, he also loses his boundaries. And without boundaries, attraction erodes at an alarming speed. In the next part, we'll explore why always saying yes and tolerating disrespect quietly kills desire. When a man's emotional stability begins to depend on a woman, his boundaries often disappear next. He starts saying yes to everything, not because he agrees, but because he is afraid of losing her. Plans are canceled at the last minute, and he accepts it without question. Disrespect is brushed off as misunderstanding. Sharp words are tolerated. His standards slowly erode, all in the name of being understanding. From his point of view, this feels like patience and empathy. From her point of view, it feels like he is fading. A man without boundaries has no solid shape. And without shape, there is nothing to respect. Kindness without self-respect is not attractive. It is invisible. Boundaries are not about control or aggression. They are quiet expressions of self-worth. When a man calmly communicates what he will and will not tolerate, he shows that he values himself, that self-valuation creates respect. And respect is the foundation of attraction. Without it, even strong feelings cannot survive. Many men fear that setting boundaries will push a woman away. In reality, the opposite is often true. Women may test limits, consciously or unconsciously, to see if a man has a spine. When he consistently folds, she learns that his needs come last, even to himself. This shifts the dynamic from partnership to imbalance. Desire fades because admiration fades. A woman can care deeply about a man and still lose attraction the moment she stops respecting him. Respect is not something she decides intellectually. It is something she feels in response to how a man carries himself. When he allows himself to be diminished, she cannot help but see him differently. Healthy boundaries are expressed without anger, threats, or emotional manipulation. They are simply stated and upheld. A man does not need to raise his voice or withdraw affection. He only needs to remain grounded and consistent. This signals strength far more effectively than compliance ever could. Once boundaries disappear, men often try to compensate by giving even more time, more effort, more resources. This leads directly into another major mistake. One that feels generous but actually communicates desperation. In the next part, we'll examine why investing too much too soon pushes women away instead of pulling them closer. Overinvestment is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in attraction because it feels like effort, generosity, and commitment. A woman shows a small amount of interest, and the man responds by giving everything. He texts first every day, plans elaborate dates before real connection is established, buys gifts, offers favors, and solves problems that were never his responsibility. In his mind, he is proving his value. In reality, he is signaling fear. Attraction is not created by how much you give. It is shaped by balance. When your investment greatly exceeds her interest, the energy shifts from choice to persuasion. You are no longer sharing, you are convincing, and convincing energy always carries desperation beneath the surface. Women feel this immediately, even if they can't articulate it. When a man invests too much too early, he removes mystery and polarity. There is no tension, no space for curiosity, no room for her interest to grow naturally. Everything is available all at once. Instead of feeling chosen, she feels pressured. Instead of leaning forward emotionally, she leans back to regain balance. Selective men are attractive because they invest intentionally. They respond to interest with interest, not with intensity. They allow connection to unfold instead of rushing to secure it. This patience communicates confidence. It shows that a man is not afraid of loss because he trusts his own value. Overinvestment also sends another quiet message that the man is afraid she might leave. When a woman senses this fear, respect declines. And when respect declines, attraction follows. She may still enjoy the attention, but she stops seeing him as a man she desires and starts seeing him as someone trying to earn a place in her life. Effort should always match energy, not fantasy. You don't invest based on how much you want her. You invest based on how much she is showing up. This keeps the dynamic healthy, grounded, and mutual. But even when men correct overinvestment, many still make one final critical mistake. They reorganize their entire life around a woman and abandon the very direction that once made them attractive. In the next part, we'll talk about why losing your mission is one of the fastest ways to lose desire entirely, and why no woman wants to be the center of a man's existence. The final and most destructive shift happens when a man slowly replaces his life with a woman. At first, she becomes a priority. Then, she becomes the focus. Eventually, she becomes the purpose. His goals soften, his routines fade, his standards lower, the habits, ambitions, and personal direction that once gave him depth and momentum quietly disappear. His days begin to revolve around her mood, her availability, and her messages. In the early stages, this can feel flattering to a woman. Attention feels good. Being desired feels validating. But over time, the dynamic changes. She does not want to be the center of a man's life. She wants to be invited into a life that is already moving forward. When a man abandons his mission to keep her, he sacrifices the very thing that made him attractive in the first place. A man without direction becomes predictable. He is always available, always responsive, always emotionally exposed. There is no edge, no tension, no polarity. His emotional world becomes transparent and dependent. This removes desire. Women are drawn to men with purpose because purpose creates gravity. It gives a man something to stand on that is bigger than the relationship itself. When a man loses his mission, he often starts seeking approval instead of commanding respect. He walks on eggshells, apologizes unnecessarily, explains himself when no explanation is required, and avoids conflict at all costs. This behavior is rooted in fear of loss, but it produces the very outcome he is trying to avoid. Respect erodes, and without respect, desire cannot survive. In many cases, men also ignore red flags just to keep the relationship alive. They tolerate inconsistency, manipulation, and subtle disrespect, telling themselves that patience will be rewarded. Each time they stay silent, they teach the woman that their boundaries are negotiable. Nothing destroys attraction faster than a man who does not protect himself. Attraction dies the moment a man stops acting from standards and starts acting from fear. When you repair these patterns, reclaim your boundaries, rebuild your mission, and anchor your identity within yourself. Women respond differently, not because you are trying harder, but because you are finally standing as a man again. Feel the pain, learn from it, move forward with clarity. And remember this above all else, never chase someone who is already walking away.